Do you have any experience like being on camera at all?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Move this a little closer. You're fine. It also moves with you.
My twin brother Roger and I were on Romper Room, which was a TV show back in the 60s.
Okay.
And I don't know how we got on it, but both of us were on it, and there were maybe 5 or 6 other kids, and it's sort of like a little kindergarten playroom setting.
Okay.
And we were on it, and I don't remember what we did, but I remember I spilled my juice.
on like a TV set?
On national TV, yes.
Wow. Have you, and any chance you could find that clip? Where would that be?
I don't know if they would even save anything from the 60s.
Yeah, the 60s. That's so long ago.
Right.
Man, that is crazy. Yeah, it's
So yes, I was on television.
Yeah, well, we talked about this with Kelly was on Oprah when she was a kid.
Yes.
And trying to find the clips, and it's hard. Like, who do you email in the TV studio now about a clip from 20 years ago to find? Because they have those files. They don't ever throw that stuff away.
I'm sure there's an archive department
Somewhere.
Yeah.
What a funny clip to see.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
Well, in the last decade, let's say, any other time on camera or video?
That was only 50 decades
and 50
ago.
decades ago.
Any other camera?
I'm just curious. It's different for everybody.
No, we met when I lived in the Bahamas when I was a kid. We met Jackie Gleason, who was ridiculously famous
Super
then.
famous,
He
yeah.
had his own television show then. Mm-hmm. But what was the scandal then was he was with his mistress.
Okay.
In the Bahamas.
In the Bahamas.
In the Bahamas on vacation. And, of course, there weren't paparazzi around or anything.
Sure.
We found out about it later that, he was still married.
Yeah.
But, of course, my dad, being ever the friendly preacher, just walks right up to him.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Gleason, I'm so-and-so, and these are all of my children. And he introduced all 5 of us.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
The man could have cared less, but...
He used to do that at dinners, I remember. We'd be at Longhorn Steakhouse when I was a kid, and he said, "This is my daughter Robin, this is her son Adam." He'd go through, like, the waiter care.
And it got worse as his Alzheimer's progressed. He would go up to the beach with us at the beach and just go up to total strangers.
At the beach.
"Hey, this is my family back here. We're here from, Maryland." And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. The mix of the Alzheimer's with that pastoral, like, confidence was interesting.
Right.
Because he was always, quick and very social and likable and funny, small talk. Because you remember standing at the exit of a church service. I mean, there's 1,000 people in a row you got to make little chit chats with, and he was so good at that.
Very good at that.
Yeah.
But then it becomes, as he got Alzheimer's, they lose that edit button.
Yeah.
Like, this is not appropriate. And,
Man, it's funny. We were watching last night a bunch of really good or just well done, like 9/11 documentaries and specials and all that stuff out of there.
Us too.
Nat Geo had one that was super interesting. They would do a whole hour. It was like 6 episodes in a row, but each episode was on like a time frame. So it would be on like from 8:30 a.m. when they hit to 9:30 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just that. So it wasn't the whole event, but just here's what happened to these people here. And man, it was interesting thinking back. I'm trying to remember how old I was. I think 11. So that's what, 4th grade?
Yeah.
And I remember I found out there was some weirdness at school, but they didn't make like an announcement. They just sent us home.
Oh, sure.
And I remember some girl on the bus said it was a terrorist attack, and none of us knew what that really meant. But then what I was trying to remember was when I got home, I remember we had some sort of sit down where you were like, "Do you understand what this was?"
Really?
Well, yeah, of course, because all parents would, right? You'd have some sort of like, a serious talk about it, but I couldn't remember if you remembered that.
I remember where I was.
Okay.
I was home that month. Mm-hmm. I'd taken a leave of absence, and I was stripping the carpet off the stairs and redoing the wood on the stairs.
At Bass Court, that house?
Yep.
Yeah.
And my mom called me and said, "Do you have your TV on?" I'm like, "No, I'm stripping stairs."
Yeah.
And so I turned it on, and so you were at that school right there. So, yeah, I'm sure you would have come home, and I would have explained it. But I don't remember sitting you down and explaining it to you, but I'm sure I would because...
Yeah. Well, you realize how insane and serious of a thing it was that happened, that it's like, I don't remember it hitting me that hard, but I was 11, so I don't think I fully grasped.
Oh, no. No, you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But these shows that are on now are just so poignant because they're including so much more detail that we never heard back then. Because it was just too horrific and too sad.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to further add to the grief that those families.
Yeah.
But it's just been fascinating to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years. I didn't realize that a ton of people died from the building's collapse, because before the first one collapsed, no one thought that was actually going to happen. So the firefighters rushed in and went all up into the building. Tons of them went into the building. And I'd completely forgotten that detail. I assumed people thought they might fall, so they all got out. Oh, but no, it was like hundreds and hundreds of people went in after it happened. It's like, oh,
right.
That makes
because
sense.
When my mom called, I remember talking to my dad too, and he said they're going to collapse. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why would they collapse? They're still upright. There's major damage. And he said, all that fuel from the plane, he said, it's going to disintegrate everything. And I'm like, what? And my gosh, 30 minutes later, he was right.
Yeah.
Stunned.
The collapses of them are part of the conspiracies that exist. There's a lot of various conspiracies around that. I'm not going to drag you down that wormhole, but part of it is that there's still people that debate that is not possible. That it was like a controlled demolition. And then you look into the security team that ran the basement, and a lot of those people were fired and swapped out in the weeks before. Seems very odd as a whole new group of people that run security that had it's stuff like that.
It seemed legitimate that the fuel did it, because the way it collapsed was just, the fuel ran straight down the middle of the building, which it would, all the elevator shafts and the stairwells.
Sure.
And so that's how it collapsed, just from within.
Fell in. Yeah. And it did look like if you've ever seen a building demolition,
implode,
it looks like that.
It sort of does look like it implodes. Yeah.
It's complicated. There's a million theories about a day, and there was always going to be. It's such a big, crazy event. But what other wild events were in my childhood that we did together? I'm trying to think. Lived through a blizzard, big old blizzard in Maryland. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
Got snowed in, couldn't open the doors and windows kind of snowed in.
Right.
That was crazy.
Dig your way out.
Yeah.
Yes. The one time I took you on spring break, you were 14 maybe. We went to Vegas.
You took a 14-year-old to Vegas.
13, maybe 12.
Yeah.
I don't think you were 14.
Was it the hookers or the gambling that made you want to do it?
Well, because we'd never been, but we were going to go to Hoover Dam. We were going to see Lake Mead.
Did go to Hoover Dam.
There was just lots to see. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we only went for 4 days. But you didn't tell me your ear was hurting before we got on the flight.
Yeah.
And so we got in flight in no time, and you covered both ears and screamed at the top of your lungs. Yeah. Blood curdling.
And it's silent. We're on a plane that's just taken off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Blood curdling. And there was a doctor or an EMT on board. And, he rushed over, like, what is wrong? And my ears. And so they called ahead to the Vegas airport to have a wheelchair ready for us. And they were going to take us to the hospital.
Yeah.
And because he thought for sure you had an ear infection. I thought maybe you had burst your eardrum.
That's what I remember thinking, burst eardrums. Right. You hear that. Yeah.
So they did. They let us off the plane first.
Yeah.
Just the two of us, which was sort of mortifying, but you didn't care,
No, I do remember it being, terrifying.
We didn't go to the hospital, but we did go to an urgent care right away. And
I remember I couldn't hear for most of that trip. Couldn't hear well.
And really worried that, okay, I'm just going to have to rent a car and drive all the way back from Vegas to Maryland. Ugh. That's what I thought we were going to have to do.
About 3,000 miles.
Because we were only there 3 days, 4 days, and I didn't think the meds would work quick enough, but he told us what to do when we got on the plane.
And my eardrums didn't burst, right? It was just they were popping, but I had such a bad ear infection.
You had an ear infection, yes.
That it was just extremely painful. But yeah, I do remember I've been back to Vegas since, but I do remember walking through a casino and not being able to hear what the casino sounded like. which was weird because it's so busy and normally it's loud and chaotic, and I couldn't hear any of that.
That was the only one walkthrough because they stopped us every time we tried to cut through to get to the lobby of the hotel.
Because I was a kid.
Yep, you were underage. You were not even allowed to walk through the casinos.
Yeah.
So, but there were all kinds of stuff to see in Vegas.
Yeah, it is family friendly. Just certain.
Right.
Yeah. It's just,
remember the M&M store that had like 500 containers of M&Ms all separated by color.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. Yeah, that was a cool trip. We went all sorts of places. We did at least, 4 or 5 cruises. We were doing a lot of cruises. Bahamas. Bermuda was a weird one. Remember during Bermuda?
The channel that cruise went down, in the channel, the ocean that they have to take in the ocean is always rough. And so the ship would pitch from left to right, bow to stern, who knows?
Yeah.
So much that you would completely lose the horizon. If you look to the left,
the horizon,
you would not see the ocean on the left.
I
And then when
remember
it
that.
pitched the other way, you would lose the ocean. And we're like, holy crap. I mean, you would have to hold on if you were walking in the hallway.
Yeah.
It was, and we're like, what's happening? And they said, oh, it's this way every time. But of course, they don't warn you of such a thing.
I remember that. You know what else I remember from that Bermuda trip
Oh,
was...
the Bermuda. I know what you're going to say.
The scooter?
The scooter.
The scooter.
Yeah.
Because you didn't want to ride it. It was like some 50cc little scooter. In Florida, they're everywhere. But like these, they cost like $1,500. But they're little like motor scooters with a license plate on them. They're street legal.
Right.
But we wanted to rent one to ride around.
You had a driver's license.
I think it might have been a learner's permit. I was 15 or 16. It was on the line where everyone in the family was like, should he be allowed to do that
But
or
you
not?
wanted to, and I knew you could.
Yeah.
So, and then when we rented it, they had a little area that you could practice, like a little circle.
That's smart, yeah.
And we went around that a couple of times because I knew you could drive it.
Yeah.
But then I was going to be on the back of it.
Yes.
So that was my only big concern, was that you had to balance your weight and mine at the same time on that. But you did it fine.
Yeah, we didn't die.
Oh, but do you remember the cruise? People warned us because you had to drive. Did you have to drive on the opposite side of the road?
Yes, it was the opposite. Really difficult
and
to remember.
And they warned us big time that tourists have accidents, and the native people that live there do not care about you tourists. They get out of our roads.
They're annoyed, yeah.
They are so annoyed. And we didn't have any trouble. It was great riding it around the whole Bermuda. But we got back to the ship, and there was a husband and wife that had done the same thing, got a scooter and rode it together. Apparently didn't stay on the side of the road or something. But they came around a corner or curve, and a local bus ran them off the road, or they missed it. Anyway, they took a slide on this motorcycle.
Down,
He broke his leg, or she did, and then they just had massive road burn and gravel in their legs, and they could barely walk the rest of the cruise.
Yeah.
So
I imagine so. Oh man, my tolerance level for getting that kind of beat up is so gone. I remember growing up having those just road rash. I'm thinking of how many times I slid across the pavement. Hundreds
for skateboarding.
And hundreds. Hundreds and hundreds of times. And now even one time sounds miserable. I'll be laid up for 2 weeks if I do that,
Right.
Yeah. It's just funny, as you get older, you stop, I don't know, you lose that toughness as a kid,
Yes. Except the other time you did, was it the little motorized skateboard thing?
The GoPed. It's called a GoPed. That was the brand, yeah.
And you were going around the neighborhood, and the sidewalk had buckled in one spot.
Tree grew under the sidewalk, yeah.
And it was buckled, and you missed it and landed and broke your arm.
I broke it in 3 places, I think. It was crooked.
Fractured it in 3, yeah.
It was the only time my arm was visibly bent, screaming.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I was doing at least 25 or 30 miles an hour. Yeah, and just rolled, and my arm just slapped the ground.
Well, remember, we were in a neighborhood that was a neighborhood association, which means you pay dues
To maintain the sidewalks.
To maintain all kinds of stuff in a neighborhood like that.
Yep.
So,
Didn't they pay the medical bills?
So I filed a claim with them, like, I want the sidewalk fixed, because he's going to be right back out there, and so will other kids that have these go-kits. Yes, they either paid medical or gave us, I don't know, $500. I don't know. It was minimal, but it was worth it, because then they did fix the sidewalk.
Sure.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, when I think back about weird things I did as a kid, or things that I hope my kid one day doesn't do, injuries are one of the ones. Like the amount of times we went to ERs and hospitals and doctor visits, as a lot, all the skateboarding era. There was always...
If that's the worst thing you ever have to put up with your kid.
Broken bones.
Take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. I remember just several. I remember one time I had probably not told you exactly what had happened, but I got a boxer's fracture. Remember that? I broke my
pinky?
It's your pinky, but it goes down into your
knuckle.
Into your hand, kind of breaks.
Yes.
And
I remember that.
And I remember, I don't know if we looked it up. This wasn't quite internet back then, but we used to call it going to the body. That's what you call where you box each other, you and a friend, but you're not allowed to hit in the face. That was the rule.
And you did that?
Oh yeah. Super fun. Yeah.
Barefisted,
just punching the body only. This was fun. I was 13 or 14 or something.
Super fun or super stupid?
Talk to a 13-year-old boy, they think all sorts of dumb things are fun.
Super stupid.
I think it was me and Darnell. And
so what did you hit that would fracture?
He turned his shoulder, and I punched him right in the side of the shoulder, and I just felt my pinky sink down into my hand. And then I think the story I had was that I fell backwards, and my hand went into the ground, and I was kind of making a fist. But no, I had punched my friend in the shoulder, and broke my pinky. Stuff like that.
And what was to lie about that? Big deal.
Well, I think you always just think as a kid, it's so especially me being, wasn't that good of a kid, you always think you're going to get in trouble. So you try to, damage control. You try to tell the story that makes you look a little better.
You were a great kid till you hit about 14.
So what happened at 14?
Dream child.
We always said I was a good baby. I remember that.
Oh, no, good toddler all the way up till you got to 14.
Yeah.
And then
puberty hit.
Right. And you got in some trouble at school, and the principal called, and she's like, just get ready. She said, they're all like this. Every last one of them.
Yeah.
All 14 and on up.
They all get
And she said, don't think it's your kid. I mean, she was just so matter of fact. She says, I'm telling you, they are all like this. They lose their minds. They have these perfectly wonderful children, and then they're just this child from who knows where. And sure enough.
And so is that how you look at like a lot of that rebellious teenage years? Like it's hormones, big chunk of it. Same with like your brothers and things like that.
Right. Because she had been a middle school teacher or principal. It was the principal that I had talked to. And she said, just believe me. They all they don't know who they are. And, they're just on the edge of hormones. And plus they're trying to find their way, and they're losing their mind, and they're tired of rules. And plus they're in a new school, the bigger grade school now. They're bottom of the They're bottom of the totem pole. And she says, everything's working against them, and they're so immature.
Yeah.
They don't know how to handle it. So. Yeah.
One thing I've been fascinated with recently is last year or so, learning about some of these studies about two-parent households.
Right.
And they say that one of the best predictors of a kid's success, whether they'll go to college or whether or not they will end up in jail, or how much money they'll make one day, that you can predict almost all of that stuff if they were in a two-parent household with a mother and a father. And if you take the father away, the chances of them going to jail are triple. The chances of them not getting a college degree are like 10 times higher.
Right.
The links are really, really crazy.
I remember that. That makes 110% sense, because when my brother Mike got in trouble as a teenager, he had to go to court. My dad had to go with him, and there was I don't know if this other teenager was there with his parent and mother, I think, and they had, I don't know, they were sort of sentencing them together, or they were hearing both. They had heard both cases,
okay.
And the judge called my brother Mike up, and my dad testified for him. What a great family we come from. We've got a solid household.
Sure.
We go to church. I'm a pastor. All this mess. And then the other boy was from a single family, some drug addiction within the family, and all this. And the judge gave my brother like infinitely more time in jail or probation, whatever it was he got.
Because he had a family structure.
Because he said there's no excuse for you to have made these horrible decisions when you come from such a solid 2-parent family that has taught you right from wrong, that has showed you all the great examples of how to be a good kid. And then he told the other boy, I get it. I get why you've made these bad choices. You've got no role models.
There's some truth to that.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to understand exactly why the 2-parent household works the best, but I think on paper what happens most of the time is, most women, most mothers are more empathetic, more nurturing.
Right.
Moms love kids in a different way than fathers do. And fathers tend to be more of the disciplinarians. And so you get that whole spectrum. You feel all the love that you should from your parents.
Right.
But you're really kept in line by the father type figure. And, parents can trade those roles around.
But when you think about it, couples that are together, it's usually opposite.
Sure. Oftentimes, yeah.
And so it's like good cop, bad cop. Good parent, bad parent. I mean, it plays into really well being opposite when you have children, as far as, because they love you each differently. One's nurturing, one's more hands off, but then one's disciplinary, one's not. So I think it's such a good balance when it's a 2-parent household, because they're the opposite. So they're going to.
Sure, exactly. They complement each other
the opposites complement, whereas single, you've got to do it all, unless you've got extended family that provides good role models.
Yeah. See, I always tell people, I think you did about as good of a job as somebody could do as, playing mom and dad, having to make the disciplinary decisions, but also making sure that I know I'm loved and cared for. And, that's a tall order for one parent.
It is, but I think I did it well. I know I did it as well as I could.
Sure.
Because I'd had 2 parents. And they're opposite, and they were, I had a good childhood, so I knew what to do.
Yeah.
Remember what I used to tell you when we went to restaurants, and these kids would be acting up, screaming or crying, and I would say, whose fault is that? Why is that child acting that way? And you would think, and I was like, why are they doing that? And I would tell you, because that parent sitting there is letting them.
Yeah.
Like, that child is upset about something, but that parent is not smart enough to figure out or how to stop it.
Sure.
Or how to appease this child or how to discipline this child.
Yeah.
It's the parent. It is not the child.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that case until how old though? Right? Because when the kid's 16, is that parent's fault anymore? What's a parent supposed to do if 16-year-old makes a bad decision? At a certain point, it's like at a certain
point, it's choices. You make this choice, that's on you.
Yeah,
you'll suffer the consequences. And you could do that with a 5-year-old. You jump on that bed one more time, there are consequences.
Sure.
And 16, you get your cell phone taken away or no car.
Yeah. I had all that stuff happen. Yep.
Yeah.
13, 14 to like 18, basically. Or until rehab, really, until 21.
Yeah.
That whole window. Hormones make a ton of sense when I think back about that. It's like you think, why did I do certain things?
Right.
Why did that seem like a good idea to do ABC, whatever the horrible story was? But yeah, hormones, I think, have a ton to do with it.
And just as equally is the immaturity.
Sure. You don't know anything about the world.
But you think you do. Mm-hmm. Like, you're so much smarter than your parents.
Oh, yeah. I thought I knew everything.
You know what I want. I know what I'm doing, and yet, clearly.
Yeah.
In hindsight, you don't. My dad used to say, if you could take a kid from 13 or 14, put them in a deep freeze until they are 21.
21. Yeah.
And everybody gets to skip that whole period.
Yeah.
And then when they pop out at 21, you take them out of the deep freeze.
Yeah.
They're mature. They're ready to listen. everybody would be so much happier.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm
because he had, 4 boys. And you.
Right.
And for everybody listening that doesn't know, the gist of the story was you're the only one that never got in a significant amount of trouble.
Right.
Right. All of the other ones had some kind of trouble at some point, And it didn't turn out, not all of them turned out that way.
Right. Girls are more mature than boys at that age.
Mature sooner, yeah.
Which is true, because I saw the trouble my brothers chose to get into.
But you never wanted to join them.
And I was like, how stupid are you?
Yeah.
Like, you did that and you know you're going to get caught and you're so dumb you get caught. It's like, if I was going to do half of what you guys do, I would know how to do it better without getting caught. Oh my gosh, they were like the dumbest criminals.
Yeah.
It caused such trauma and drama in the family. It's like, oh, I'd never do it.
Man.
So not interested.
Do you remember, what was the worst thing that you actually did as a teenager? I'm sure it wasn't that bad compared to most people. But, do you remember any moments of where, you're like, oh, that was a bad thing you got away with,
Usually my smart mouth got me in trouble.
Back talking?
Back talking.
Yeah.
And
I could see that, yeah.
The worst, we'd had a babysitter when I was 8. It wasn't our regular babysitter. She couldn't come. So they got this backup girl.
Oh, and you decided to test her.
And no, we were little.
Yeah.
We were 8, so that meant that my brothers were 6 and 4 and 2. So we were watching TV. It was in the evening, and she would not let us sit on the floor to watch TV.
Weird.
You had to sit on the furniture. And I'm like, we're kids. How weird is that?
Yeah.
And she just kept on no, they can't sit on the floor. And I just blurted out, well, you're the backup babysitter and we didn't want you in the first place. Well, she told on me.
Yeah.
And I got whipped when I got home.
Yeah.
When they got home. So it's like, but my dad laid me across the bed and counted out 6.
Yeah.
With the belt.
Oh, you got the belt
I got the belt.
Up.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Man. See,
people, yes, it's legit. Yes, I would have whipped my kid Adam, but I put the fear. I would have whipped you.
Yeah.
Had you needed it, I would have whipped you.
Yeah.
I believe in the belt.
By the time I was acting up, I was too old to do that. Right? Because you don't do that to
No, you don't do that to older.
14, 15, 16. You're not spanking them.
No.
But
because you have to outsmart them at that point and take away
sure
what they want. But no, I had the belt for sure. All my brothers did too.
Man. But see, would you say it worked on you, but not so much on them?
It did when they were young. Oh, definitely.
Young.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. And I had planned to whip you as well, when I knew I was going to have a child.
You said I'll do that if I need to do it. Yeah.
Of course, but I don't know. I'm so authoritative in discipline, with my voice. I put the fear of God in you.
You used to say that. I remember that feeling. Yeah.
I could look at you and you knew, okay, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Or if I said no, you knew I meant no.
Yeah.
And so many of these parents don't mean no. I've told you 10 times.
Sure.
Well, 1 is all it means. And then, yes, they should get whipped after that or smacked or something. But anyway, I could probably count on my hands, one hand, how many times I got spanked. But my brothers, regularly. And we survived, and it was not abuse.
Yeah, it's controversial. I think part of the controversy is because there were certain times in, let's say, American or Western history where people, really rode that line of what child abuse is. Like my dad, for example, he had stories as a child that were clearly way abusive. Over the line. But in that era, do you remember the first case of child abuse was filed as animal abuse? Because nobody had ever heard of such a thing, that a parent could beat their kid. And they said, well, yeah, we all beat our kids. But people, didn't understand that there's a line you can cross where this is
there's
abusive.
Beating and then there's spanking and discipline,
Yeah.
And there are some parents that should not do it. They don't have the temperament. Mm-hmm. They can't.
Or they do it in anger. They can't.
They really should be spanking in discipline and not in anger. Mm-hmm. And especially if you do it right at that moment. You're so mad at this kid for whatever they've done. Mm-hmm. And clearly, you should know if you're the parent that should be doing that or not should be doing that. Sure. Yeah.
I honestly like the way that my dad had mentioned it. He probably got a good perspective on it, being that he lived through, some of that stuff. But I remember he said one time that he had a story where he found a book of matches sitting on a curb,
Right.
and he went and was lighting them and just throwing,
Right.
he was 8 years old or something,
Right.
lighting matches.
Totally curious.
And it is dangerous. You
Yeah.
should be in a little trouble. You can't do that. But his dad came and just beat him half to death.
Right.
And he said the second it was over, he went right back outside and lit all the other matches.
Right.
Right, because it fosters like a hatred,
yeah.
to have that sort of thing happen. And
But now that he knew he couldn't discipline you. Like he would never even.
he
like,
always said that. He never touched me.
He
Yeah.
never touched me because of the abuse he suffered. So he's like, nope.
Yeah.
He didn't do it.
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think I could picture my kid doing something bad enough where it's like, oh no, an ass whooping is in order here.
Right.
But to me, that would never be the go-to. That would be down the list of
It really
punishments.
depends on the temperament of your child. Like you were such a good kid. Like, we had a great relationship when you were a little kid. And I don't know, some kids you just have to break their mean spirit.
Just gotta crack them open. Yeah, sure.
Well, some
sure.
are just worse. And
Yeah.
so you have to know your child well. Like you would not have benefited from being spanked,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
others, yes, indeed. My brothers, yes. They
Yeah.
needed.
Well, we've learned this lesson, obviously raising kids and dogs, not quite the same thing, but like, you've met our 2 dogs this week, Tahoe and Rhino, and, Tahoe, like I said, when he was young, you could snap your fingers at him and he'd pee, so the thought that you'd hit that dog or spank him or any,
Right.
it's crazy. It's
Right.
crazy. But Rhino, you could soccer kick him and he doesn't even understand if you're playing or not. Maybe we're just having fun,
Right.
It's, but we realized that the more kids you have, you'd have to change your parenting style for different kids,
You do.
Yeah, I remember you had always said, people had asked if I was the only one. And you said, he is the only one, but I could have had 5. I remember you used to say that.
Yeah.
I could have had more.
Oh, yeah, I would have.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It was my dad. That's what it was. You
Right.
didn't want to have more with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and women ought to recognize that.
Sure.
Like I knew just within the first year.
The first year of me being born.
Right.
Yeah.
After you were born. Just how he didn't pitch in to help. He wasn't hands-on.
Okay.
Didn't put you to bed. Didn't really want to change the diaper. He was better when you were like 2 because he was more of a playmate.
Yeah, my stepmom that he remarried used the same word.
Playmate.
Said playmate was more of the.
And then sometimes when you were little, a baby, I would go to the grocery store and I'm like, I'm going to the store. You've got Adam. Well, you can't take him with you, and I'm like, no. Maybe I'm getting my hair cut afterwards, and he's like, well, I don't really want to babysit. And I'm like, guess what? It's not babysitting. It's your own child. But that's how he looked at it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, nope, not having any more with this one.
Man.
So even though we weren't even near divorce,
you already knew.
I just knew and wasn't even thinking of divorce. I just knew, okay, I don't want any more.
It's so strange though, because I think of, I had talks about, before Kelly and I got married, because like everything, I spent, years thinking about it first. And one of the things that made me more confident in getting married was that I knew I wanted to have kids with her. That was never in question, And I don't know, I assumed you had thought about that before you married my dad, right? You had thought,
oh yeah, we thought we would
be the father of my children?
Oh yeah, we thought we would have 2 or 3 because he
Yeah.
came from a family of 3. I came from 5. So yeah, that was.
Man, but then it was like must have been somewhat of a letdown, to say like, this is not the father I thought that I'd have here,
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't mean or anything. And I didn't even tell him that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to have any more,
Yeah.
And, but about the second year, I think when you got in preschool no, you weren't even in preschool then. I don't know, at some point, but it wasn't until you were 2 or 3. I said something about, I don't think we should have any more because we could provide so much better for him, if it was just 1, and he bought that crap. So, but that's just what I told him. I was just like, nope, not having any more with him. So,
you ever wonder what it would have been like to have more? I do. Always
Oh, it'd have been
wonder,
great. Yeah.
Would a brother, sister,
Yeah. Yeah, I could have had more, handled more, you
Yeah.
know. And yeah, I would have totally done that.
Yeah. Another life.
Another life. Like I would have even done foster children.
Oh, okay. You thought about doing that before?
With my current husband. I've thought about it. Would like to do it. You can just do infants.
Interesting.
Not that they...
You'd
and
be
they're
so
not
good at that.
And
Yeah,
they're
that'd
not
be
going
awesome.
up for adoption. I have a friend in Kansas who does this. They just take infants,
Mm-hmm.
and the system is working with the birth parents to take the child back into their home. So those children are not up for adoption. They never will be.
Oh, the parents are having problems.
The parents are having problems. They were removed, and our parents are still working to get the children back, the baby back.
Gotcha. So the parent might have had a drug problem or been arrested or had
Right.
some serious legal issues.
And as soon as they get something cleared up, you might have an infant for 1 month, 6 months, 12 months.
Well, that's a cool setup because you're not raising this kid, but you are making
Right.
a huge difference in their life. Yeah.
It's shorter. And so the birth parents, you're working with them. And anyway, I thought that would have been cool. But
Yeah. That would have been awesome.
yeah,
Super
but
cool.
this husband's not into that either. So no more babies for me.
Well, having baby around is a lot.
Oh, my gosh.
I think men get more nervous of the liability that is a kid, because like, for example, like when we're around like babies, like Kelly's got no problem. She'll hold the baby right away and just do all the maternal instincts kick on. It's
Right.
no problem. But for me, I've noticed like, do I really want to hold a baby? If I drop this baby, I will ruin these people's lives. Like if something were to happen,
Right.
like I'm responsible for this devastating, horrible thing that happened. And so I'm like, I'm okay. Like, like I get more nervous.
Okay, so how many 10-pound objects have you dropped? 15-pound objects.
that's a good
Really?
point.
Have you dropped something and just shattered it? No.
That's a good point.
No.
Yeah, you don't drop 10-pound little footballs for no reason. Yeah.
And if you fell or tripped, believe me, your body will roll
Yeah, you'll
the right way that you protect that baby because
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't land on it.
I learned something so interesting the other day. I'd never heard this. Well, we went over to our friends, Matt and Olivia. They just had a baby. And, a few weeks later, we went over and brought them dinner. And Matt was telling me, he said, I don't know why, but he said the last, 2 months or so, he said, I have put on like 20 pounds. And he's a thin guy, so he didn't mind.
Right.
But he's like, and it's not just a belly. He's like, I haven't been eating any different. I just bulking up, and I don't really know why. And no kidding, the next day, I was listening to a podcast on something with hormones, and it said that women release a pheromone, which are you smell them, right?
Yeah.
So it's like airborne hormone messages is what they are, right? And women in their last trimester of pregnancy release pheromones that the man smells, and it signals them to gain weight. And the thought is that that they would be more warm for when the baby is born for cuddling, that they would also have more fat reserves so they could hunt longer. It's like an evolutionary thing, right? Because for a very, very long time, that would be kind of the setup is the woman would have the child nursing or whatever, and then the man would have to go get food. But if he had more weight on his body, that he would actually be more capable, to stay out longer and in colder temperatures. But anyway, that's a real thing. So like the man gaining weight around the time the child is born, that is an actual hormonal process that happens. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a guy at church that happened.
Put on a bunch of weight when the babies came.
He's just got this little pot belly, and he's like, well, she makes cookies all the time, but I don't eat them. But they'd had a baby.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense.
I thought that was so fascinating. You know?
Well, prepare yourself.
I know. I know, kidding. Yeah.
Well, when y'all have a baby, don't plan to keep it long because I'll be taking it.
I figured.
You'll have visitation rights, but that's it.
Well, we've said what a wild card that'll be for you because, how often are you going to come down? You going to talk about moving down or, what's the setup?
Well, my mama and my husband better just plan to go to the next life because
something out.
I'll be in Florida a lot.
Yeah. Well, Kelly's dad moved to Perdido Key, but her mom is still there. So we've got the double grandma set up if needed. What do you want to be called? Like we never talked about that before.
Like, who cares?
You don't care?
No.
You don't have any preference of
Not
what the
at
grandma
all.
name would be?
No. I remember my mother did. Don't
Yeah.
call me grandma. What? You are? No, she picked Grams. It has to be Grams.
She picked Grams.
Yeah, I don't want to be called grandma. That sounds so old. I'm like,
That's what I call Grandma Rose. Grandma. Yeah.
I was like, no, I
Yeah.
could care less.
There's there's some really weird ones out there. In the South, I've heard like peepaw and like very strange ones
Right.
from like, that's a weird way to say
I know
it.
one, she wanted all of them to call her honey.
Honey?
Yep.
That's
So
not
all
even
her-
like a
So
traditional.
all her grandkids call her honey. I'm like, that's too weird.
Yeah, that's a little.
Yeah.
You just like the name Honey. That's all
Right.
that is. Yeah. Kelly's grandparents on the German side, they go Oma and Opa, which was kind of nice because kids can say it.
Yeah.
It's a little
That's
simpler,
true.
and they go Opa, Oma, Just
Yeah.
little babies. But that's probably what her side would do, the German one. But
Makes
yeah.
sense. And it sounds German, but it sounds
It does.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yep.
totally does.
Oh, I have no preference.
Well, good to know. We'll go through the list, pick something cool.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, our mom, we did almost, we did about 45 minutes. What do you think? How you feeling?
I don't feel like I'm going to get famous. I don't see the money coming in. I don't quite see it.
Yeah. Well, famous is a weird one for podcasting. It's
Oh, I don't have to be famous. Just little checks coming in would be good.
well, I think it's always interesting to have somebody, there's a lot of people that have watched me online for 10 years, which is weird. Not all of them, but there
Yeah.
are some people who have been watching me on
Check in
video.
periodically, even like every couple of years.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Things like that. And so seeing somebody's mom, I always think there are some people I've watched online for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then I think their mom, like, that's so interesting. It would be.
Like you'd love to see Joe Rogan's mom.
That's a good example. Yeah,
Right.
that's a great example.
Right.
You just wonder,
You
like,
just see a different side, I'm sure.
and you wonder, like, who's responsible for raising this person? Because they turned out a certain way,
Right.
and their parents are
You're welcome.
involved. Yeah. This podcast has been an interesting project, being able to be on camera, but not through the drum filter, because that's normally
Right.
how everything has worked this whole
Right.
time.
It's got to be a nice change.
Nice but scary. Scary in this kind of.
Sure.
There are certain beliefs that you and I probably even share that it would be very foolish for us to say them on camera, knowing this is going on YouTube.
Right.
Very foolish. It
Sure.
would get taken down. It'll get reported. You'll find.
Censorship's a
Yeah.
living thing in this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shouldn't be, but there is.
Yeah, it's scary. Scary having
But then
to-
you think there's some beliefs too. Like I wouldn't want to hear somebody's rant about something.
something insane.
Right. But
Yeah.
then that's what your on and off button is for.
That's the thing. I look at it as like being offended is almost always a choice. Almost always. There are some things that
Right.
are offensive for
Yeah.
sure. But, your willingness to sit with that feeling and say, I am so offended. Your
And
willingness
yet
to do
people
that
keep
is-
watching it or keep listening to it.
That's the thing.
They do. Or
Yeah.
they keep following the accounts on Instagram or wherever.
Sure,
And it's
sure.
like,
You chose to be here.
you
Yeah.
can unfollow. You can turn it off.
Yeah.
But they don't. They'd rather type in or
Sure.
respond so negatively and so hurtful. It's absurd.
Yeah. Even when I get negative comments on like a drum video, which is not controversial, but someone will say, I hate this and I hate that. And I go, you clicked the video. I did not come to your door
Right.
and knock and say, do you want to watch my video? Like you clicked it and chose to come here.
And then as soon as you don't
complain.
like something, that's not for me. And
Sure,
scroll on.
Sure. Well, it's like you go to a restaurant that wasn't that great. The move is we don't go back to that restaurant.
Right.
We don't have to go trash them and tell the world what a horrible restaurant.
Exactly.
Maybe it comes up one day and you say, I didn't really like it.
right.
But
We're
to
just
go-
not going back.
Yeah, we just won't go back, and who cares? Yeah,
It's really a lack of maturity.
sure.
It really is. If you just keep choosing to listen or follow or and then to actually type in some horrible, hateful, hurtful comment
Yeah.
that you wouldn't say face to face
Yeah.
in 500 million years,
Yeah.
but yet you'll type it
Yeah.
because they're not looking at in your eyes.
Of course.
It's unbelievably. How
remember-
immature are you?
You remember Louis C.K. had that bit? I feel like you and I watched this together. We were just dying. It was like, in traffic, somebody comes close to your car. They don't hit it. They just
Right.
cut you off and it's kind of close. And the things you'll scream at them in the car.
Right.
But now imagine that same situation happened in an elevator. somebody just kind of came close to brushing by you.
Right.
And could you imagine if you said the same thing? Say, you piece of, how dare you come
right.
here? It's just things you would never do in person. Right. But the internet is it's like road rage kind of stuff.
It is.
When there's a separation, you're in this little glass pod, nobody can hear you, or you're on the other side of a keyboard. Yeah, things people will say are outrageous. I've been called things online that no one has ever said to me in person.
And no one ever would.
No one ever would. Because it's immediately like, we're going to have to fist fight here if you say that to my face,
Yeah.
Oh, and this is even back in the drinking days, at bars, getting in heated conversations or things like that. Nobody says, I don't know, the things I've been called. I'm calling every name you could ever think of. Name and insult. Like, yep, absolutely been called that. Even down to scam artist, liar, manipulator, or
they just have to respond. I'm just thinking on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, rather than just hit your unfollow button, oh no, I have to type in, I do not agree with you.
And I'm unfollowing you.
And I am unfollowing you. Well, really? Do you think that person really cares over one follower? No, just hit unfollow and move on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that the younger generations can learn from older ones, Yeah. I mean, older generations have their sensitivities to different things. But yeah, for the most part, it is shocking how thin-skinned people are nowadays. It is weird,
It's tragic.
Well, all right. That's it. You did it. Your first podcast.
My first podcast. Pretty sure it's my last.
I think you'd be good at podcasting.
My gosh, I think it would be... That'd be torture.
Would it?
Yes.
Just sit around and share your thoughts and ideas?
Just sit around and talk.
But you're so good at sitting around and talking. Like, you have high social skills.
Yeah, just...
Yeah. Well...
now that I'm retired, things that I have to do...
Yeah.
I hate it.
You hate the obligations.
I hate the obligations. Because now that I have it, next to none.
Spoiled on the freedom. Then.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Like even volunteering at the school that I volunteer. I'm roped into Fridays for this library day. And it's like, I hate it. Because when I wasn't assigned just to library, I could go in any day I want.
Yeah.
And volunteer. And I was just organizing.
Yeah.
But now that I'm roped into Fridays, it's like dread. So if I had to be roped into a podcast, like, oh my gosh, no.
Well, I look at it's more passion project for sure. You want to talk about things you like talking about too.
Right.
But I'll tell you the one weird benefit I'm finding of doing a podcast is you can talk to people. Imagine any bloggers you follow or people who just do things online that you like.
Yeah.
They will sit down and talk to you if it's for a podcast, not just because you're some person that wants to talk to them. That's millions of people want to do that.
Right.
But if it's a podcast, there's a reason to do it. So you can get people
to
sit down and engage with you. And, sometimes these are people that are authors on crazy topics or experts in a certain field.
It would benefit them for sure.
It benefits them to talk to you, but then you get free advice or free knowledge or you learn crazy things.
But then to have to find people and hook up with them, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, it's a business. You're running a business in that way.
I'm retired.
Yeah. Well, this was an easy one then.
Yes.
Yes.
I was obligated though because you're my boy. So, but now obligation is over. Woo!
Well, we'll do part 2 when you're down in Florida next time. It's your turn. I've been up here about twice in a month now. So.
Well, I'll come to Florida, but there's no need for a second podcast. I'm not promising anything.
Well, all right. We'll see. Well, thank you, Mama. Love you.
You're welcome. Love you too, sweet boy.
All right.